What's up, fraud fighters? One of the biggest challenges in fraud today isn't technology. It isn't even artificial intelligence. And it isn't even the fraudsters themselves. It's communication. Every day, banks, credit unions, fintechs, crypto platforms, and law enforcement agencies are investigating fraud. Each organization sees a piece of the puzzle. The problem is that those pieces don't always get connected quickly enough to stop the bad actors before the money is gone. Meanwhile, the criminals are collaborating, they're sharing tactics and moving funds faster than ever. Today's guest has spent his career on both sides of that challenge. Joining me today is Malik, former Secret Service agent and founder of Deconflict, a platform designed to help law enforcement and financial institutions collaborate more effectively around fraud investigations and financial crime intelligence. We're going to talk about where collaboration breaks down, why speed matters more than ever, right? And what happens when we start building bridges between organizations instead of operating in silos. So Malik, welcome to Fraud Forward.
Thank you, Haley. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
I truly am so excited about this. I told you on another call that I went to a financial crimes working group in South Carolina, and I overheard two law enforcement agents saying, "Hey, have you heard about Deconflict?" And I was like, "Oh my God, he's coming on the podcast. This is great." So I'm so excited to have you here. And before we dive into it, I would love it if you could walk listeners, through your background in law enforcement and financial crime investigations.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me. I did 22 and a half years in law enforcement. The first 11 and a half, 12 years in St. Louis as a police officer, where I investigated anything from a petty theft always to responding to a homicide scene. And then I laddered over to the Secret Service back in 2016 under the Obama administration, and then recently exited back in January of 2026. And throughout my whole career, one of the biggest problems and challenges I saw, even when I was a patrol officer, was information sharing, as you mentioned earlier. And that's really where I saw the opportunity 22 years ago. And then when I came to the Secret Service, a lot of people don't know, but we have two missions. One is protecting the protectee, the president, the principals, and the other is financial crime investigations. And that is really last decade is where I have spent in financial fraud, and where I have seen these actors, how smart they are in conning and scamming people. I mean, it just blew my mind. Like, this is something you see in the movies. So living it through real life, it's an eye opener.
For sure. And I love that you called that out because I can remember when I first heard Secret Service, the agency. Obviously, I've seen all the movies. And so I'm only thinking of protecting the president. So whenever they're like, "Yo, you probably need to reach out to Secret Service about this," I'm like, why in the world would we do that? But quickly found out that it is such a great resource to with Secret Service and financial crime investigations with, financial institutions. So I'd love to know what originally pulled you into like the fraud and the crypto related investigations over all the others.
Yeah, so when I got there in 2016, I was one of the new guys, right? And when I was a new guy, you have to do, anything and everything they want you to do. And nobody really wanted to do crypto because crypto was new. Nobody knew what it was. And so my really good boss, Brian Cockrell, was like, "Hey, I got this crypto investigation case for you." And I didn't know what it was, to be honest. And so they sent me to bunch of training, and I like complex investigations. And that was kind of my like, okay, like this is something different. This is not your standard, bad check where you just walk into the bank, speak with the manager. This was a little bit more complex in that people are hiding behind computers, behind keyboards, and doing this type of investigations. And even though Secret Service put me through some phenomenal, one of the best trainings in the world, there's always that thing that you're like, okay, well, there's always more to learn. And what I did was, I'd go to the gym or what have you, and I would always like watch these YouTubers talk about crypto and nothing about fraud, but just like what crypto was, what's a hash, what's a transaction ID, what's gas fees, what's, hot wallet, what's a cold wallet. And that's how I kind of learned everything that I know about crypto today. And obviously, when I was in St. Louis investigating these cases, I would often come across the local police officers always reaching out, "Hey, I got this crypto case. I'm stuck here. Can you help me?" And that's really how I developed everything that I know about crypto through Secret Service, and obviously through self-learning. And I was able to pass information on to my local agencies when I was in St. Louis. So
And that's so fascinating. And also, it's like we have more things in common than you think. Because that's how I got into fraud was nobody else wanted to do it. I was the new girl in the office, and they were like, "Here, you do this because we don't want it." And then I just fell down the rabbit hole and loved every bit of it. During your time with Secret Service, were there any types of fraud trends that were escalating faster than others that really made you think, "Oh gosh, we've got to do more."
Yeah, pig butchering was probably number one. That is like that was. I remember my very first case. I got a call from this home builder that said he met this beautiful Asian woman, and it was Christmas Eve. He gets a random text saying, "Do you invest in crypto?" or something ridiculous like that. And he responds back. I mean, of course, like as law enforcement, then we tell everybody, "Hey, don't respond. Just delete it." Right? But he responds back, "I don't, but my son does," and that was her hook. And she got him for $750,000. But by the time we got involved, and this is very standard within at least my cases, we're always like 4 months behind on average. They build that relationship. They con you as much as they can. They quote unquote milk you as much as they can for the pig butchering. And when he went to withdraw his funds, typical standard, it gets a pop up. IRS is requesting you put another 10% in. He puts another 10% in to get his $2 million out because he was up so much in 4 months. And yeah, and of course, she continues to ask him for more and more money. He's like, "Well, I think this is fishy." Then he contacts us. But by that time, we traced the funds. It was over in China. Money was long gone. And we're 4 months behind at this point. And, we had all the tools that we possibly could, but it wasn't about the tooling like you mentioned earlier. It wasn't about AI. It was like one human was lured into something to believe that he was investing into a company that was going to 10x his income. And being a home builder, he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, let me see if I can make more money on the side." And unfortunately, he lost 750, $800,000 in that one instance.
I hate that so much. I can remember my time with Operation Shamrock where I was on the victim calls, and oh, those were some of the hardest things to listen to. And you're exactly right. We're always 4 months behind. When I would do my training for frontline, you've got to remember we've got 10 to 15 minutes to try to change what they've had poured into them for the last 4, 6, 12 months, right? And so it's almost like it's an impossible task.
Yeah, I had a case where the victim, she cursed me out and hung up the phone on me because I told her she was being scammed. She said, "No, I FaceTimed him. He's the guy, and you don't know what you're talking about." And so it was actually her daughter who reached out to us and said, "Hey, can you please help my mom?" Like it was actually started off as a credit union, contacted us saying, "Hey, we believe this is some sort of a scam. If you can help us." So we spoke with her initially. She hung up on us. She thought we were scammers. And then the bank got her daughter involved. So I spoke with daughter and I said, "Listen, this is what I do for a living. Based on what you guys are telling me, it appears to be, a pig butchering scam or romance scam, excuse me." And spoke with the mom. She cussed us out and she hung up the phone on us. I mean, at that point, you're like, "Lady, I don't know what else I can do for you."
Yeah.
And then she never contacted us back. So at that point, she had already wired a little over $100,000 to this Italian stallion or in Italy who was building this oil rig company or something ridiculous. And but yeah, so unfortunately, we have people like that as well who think we as the government were the scammers and don't want to work with us. So it's hard.
It's truly hard. So, but at what point did you realize like that communication gap between organizations was becoming a major problem?
Well, I've known that for years, right? It's from my days as a patrol officer. When I got to the federal government is when I really saw it happening. It's like I worked on multiple cases and I'd get called from the FBI. "Hey, we're targeting the same individual or same network." DEA. I got a really good friend of mine over DEA. And I'm like, "Hey, dude, like we're watching this target. Although DEA does drugs, we're not, as with Secret Service, the one thing I actually loved is like you could work really any case that you wanted to work as long as you could tie some sort of nexus back to money. And what doesn't touch money? Everything
Right.
touches money, right? So then it became upon you as the agent, as the investigator, what you wanted to do. Like even me, like, 20 years in, I still had that cop mentality in me, like, "Hey, let's go lock up and these bad guys." And so I was involved in anything and everything that cops called me on. Like it could be a small case or a big case. Like I was, oh, let's do it. And so that's just my personality. This is who I am. And so when this thing happened, but not nobody's sharing information, I was like, there's got to be a better way. So then I built back in the day, it was called the Verify Wallet. We rebranded it to Deconflict. We're like, what if we built a platform that allowed you as the investigator to share only the case details that you felt comfortable sharing, but enough to where Haley, you and I can know what we're working on as law enforcement officer, and then we can de-anonymize some of that information. And with your consent, we share that information to the banks and the financial institutions and the fintechs and the cryptos of the world so they can make a much better decision instantly. For example, the way in Deconflict it would work, law enforcement agency would come, they would flag a crypto wallet along with my contact details, and if the institution sees it, instantly they're like, oh, let me stop this, let me stop these funds, and contact the officer or the agent who reported it, and then they can work through the legal processes, whether it's a freeze letter or subpoenas or whatever, and try to get the money back to the victim. But before us doing this, really nothing like this existed. And so we truly believe information sharing is probably the one of the biggest hindrance in law enforcement and the finance sector because everybody's siloed. Nobody wants to share anything. So we wanted to build a platform that allowed you to share as much or as little information as you wanted. And obviously with AI, we can do a lot more now. So you can report, literally a couple of data points, and we can take it from there and build this nice, beautiful contextual information for the financial sector so they can make a decision, which otherwise they would not have known, or allow the bad actors to withdraw those funds. And now the Secret Service or the FBI or your local PD is sending you a freeze letter or, hey, what's it? Well, who owns this record or who owns this account? By the time it's too late because the bad actor is already gone, especially with these money mules. Like there was cases we'd work where our money mules was homeless people. These bad actors would pay them $100 to buy them drugs or buy them liquor to use their identity to even open up a KYC, right? You like know your customer, and you would use their IDs to open these accounts to commit fraud. And as law enforcement, we're really going after quote unquote the homeless guy who has zero idea what crypto even is, right? So. Yeah.
100%. I've even seen I'm hoping to have him on here one day, but Shane Ensminger from Kentucky, he worked with some other investigators and just specifically for the homeless things. They went around and they gave out get out of jail free cards.
Mhm.
And it was basically if anybody walks up to you and they try to get you to open up an account or try to get you to cash a check, like we will pay you for those checks. Don't do this. Like come to us, call us. And so it worked out really well. So I'm hoping to have him on, but it just shows truly like this is all over, right? It's not just in your area, it's not just in my area, it's everywhere. There was also just for the listener's sake, because I love to tie it to real world experiences and stories. There was a story that you shared with me about a particular bank that you mentioned where relationships and timings made all the difference in freezing the account. Could you tell us more about that story?
Yeah, so our bad actor was in Mexico. He had conned a law firm in New York, and having them believe that he was suing a company for infringing on his IP, and they were going to get $534,000, and they would hold it in their escrow account, take their fees, and transfer the rest of the funds back to Mexico. What this bad actor did was it was a BEC, business email compromise case. He got into through a phishing link to one of the local truck owners, truck dealers, and he watched their communication over 4 to 6 months. And when the transaction came through, saying, "Okay, we're going to purchase this truck," it was a big construction truck for $534,000. He went in and responded back as a follow-up email saying, "Hey, don't send the money to this bank. Instead, send it to this large bank." And luckily, I had really good relationship with this large bank. And I picked up the phone after I did all my investigation. I picked up the phone. I called the investigator. I said, "Hey, is there money here?" And he said, "Yes, millions of dollars." Okay. So once he told me it was millions of dollars, we immediately, sent a freeze letter, and they froze the entire account. Now, what this bad actor did, he was able to already withdraw the funds because we were, again, like I said earlier, 4 months behind. So by the time we got the call, we were so far behind. And this was actually a prominent law firm in New York. So that wasn't making sense to me. I'm like, why would a prominent law firm be part of a fraud? But after the dust settled, that's what we realized. What he did was he opened two separate accounts, one in Mexico, one in New York, told the New York law firm he's suing this company for that IP infringe. They're going to get $534,000, which was stolen from the trucking company. Law firm gets the $534,000. they keep their cut and transfer the rest of the money back into Mexico. So my trace went through the law firm, seeing their account was the one that received the funds. So we froze that account because that was my bad actor account. But once the dust settled, we realized that the law firm had already given the money back to him, and by keeping that cut. So that is, if I had not had that relationship, I would have gone through at least another 2 or 3 weeks worth of work to get the paperwork through the legal processes to him. But just that one phone call, I had really good relationships. He was able to hold the account, and then we worked through the legal processes and got everything else that we needed. But that is like, I think the missing piece here is like, we just don't share information. We don't talk to one another. And I think that is like the biggest hindrance in fraud, in my opinion.
Oh, I so agree. You're preaching to the choir right now. Don't worry. But and so I think the main point too is that the relationships, right? That fraud investigations today still rely very heavily on relationships and trust between people. Why do you think relationships matter so much in fraud response?
I think without having a full picture, without having relationships, like nobody wants to share information. Everybody's like, from banking sector, there's a lot of rules and regulations and policies. They can't share stuff for legal purposes, and we totally respect that. And then from the law enforcement perspective, we're like, no, tell us everything because we're law enforcement. And the banks are like, no, we can't tell you anything without a legal subpoena or a freeze letter. So I think having those relationships, you should be able to at least do your job where you're not violating any rules and regulations. You're still following the law, and I think we should. But having those relationships, like it should not be illegal for me to pick up the phone call, Haley, and call you and saying, "Hey, is there money in this account?" And you're like, "Yes, Malik, there is money in this account," because you trust me enough. I'm not doing it just to do it, right? And then I follow up with my legal request. I can then pick up the phone, call the prosecutor, like, "Hey, I just spoke with Haley at Bank of America, and she said, yes, there's millions of dollars in there, and my bad actor deposited money in this account, and I need to subpoena as an exigent circumstance." And they can be like, "Okay, cool, here you go," right? We should be able to have those type of relationships, but unfortunately, we don't.
Yeah, and I think that relationships can only take us so far. So I'd love to talk about the broader communication challenges that you're seeing between financial institutions, law enforcement, investigators. Why those gaps are creating opportunities for fraudsters. So, from your perspective, where does collaboration break down most often today?
Yeah, great question. I think from my perspective, collaboration breaks down often at the point of ownership and urgency, where no single party feels fully responsible for pushing information across organizations quickly. I think going back to earlier, like there's a lot of rules and regulations in place to where everybody feels afraid. They're like, well, I don't want to touch it. This is not my problem. Or let me get somebody else involved. And that, unfortunately, that second person you got involved doesn't want to own it, doesn't want to take responsibility because they're afraid to make a wrong decision and potentially get fired or reprimanded. And so they're like, okay, well, just send me a subpoena or send me a freeze letter because that's how we've always done it, and that's how we'll do it. So
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like kind of the out of sight, out of mind. Like
yeah.
if I don't know about it, it's not a problem that I have to worry about. What do you think about financial institutions? Like, what are they missing when it comes to fraud intelligence sharing?
A consistent information flow, data quality, having those relationships. I mean, banks are always like the first ones to get those deposits, and then the law enforcement is always behind. But if we had some sort of a communication layer between the two parties where everything's happening in real time or near real time, I think that would go a long way. So I think having consistent information would definitely help.
I agree. I've sat in the practitioner role of the financial institution and having to look and going, if I could only see the other side of this transaction, I'd do so much better with my knowledge, right? I'd be able to determine, hey, no, this is suspicious because this isn't going to purchase a puppy dog. This is going actually, just another wallet, or this is going somewhere else. So being able to have both sides, I totally agree. The other question I have is, how often were you seeing multiple agencies like unknowingly investigating the same targets?
It happens fairly often. Just recently, actually, I think I did a post on LinkedIn. We had 9 agencies, 9 victims, 9 different states targeting the same individual who was in Nigeria, right? This is like one of our smaller investigations, believe it or not. I think our largest one, at least within the Deconflict platform where I've seen, it was 30 states across like 15 or 16, 30 agencies across 15 or 16 states. They were all investigating this extremely well-known Georgia prison gang in Georgia, right? But nobody knew that. So we're leaving so much information just like in silos, that just like frustrates me so much. It's like maybe I'm not a good investigator, but I may have the lead that could solve the case, right? So that is like I'm gonna just give some information. Like you don't have to share everything. You don't have to share your secret sauce. We get it, but some information you can at least speak with this with this investigator because your lead may be the lead that actually solves this problem. We had one case. I can't get too deep into it, but I'll just leave it at like it was tied to a homicide investigation. Okay, so just I mean you just don't know what this particular lead could get help other investigators ultimately. So
So true. So true. Yeah. I just think back on other cases where I've had multiple agencies that came to the bank and they were like, hey, we're looking for this. And I'm like, oh, really? Because the FBI just left. So, yeah, I mean, I'll share it with you. Obviously, you've got your subpoena, but you might want to reach out to those guys because they're also working something on this. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm just going to ask it for argument's sake. But do you think fraudsters collaborate more effectively than the organizations trying to stop them?
oh, 100%. I don't
Yeah.
think that. I mean, listen, they have every Snapchat, Signal, WhatsApp, a Telegram. I mean, you name it, right? They'll exploit everything, including dating apps, to share information. Okay, that's how sophisticated these people are. I had one
Yeah.
suspect. I had one suspect. He was using Grinder dating app, right? This is their network. They'll pay the whatever the I don't know whatever Grinder costs, but whatever their premium fee is to get those unlimited messages. They will do anything and everything to escape. But unfortunately, with law enforcement, I just wish our government did a much better job at this. Like allow us to kind of spread our wings a little bit.
Yeah.
Without listen, we can play within the rules, within the Constitution, but let us allow us to do our job effectively. And I think that's where a lot of frustration becomes from law enforcement officers. Like, I spent 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months of doing this job, and then just because I didn't have a period at the end of the sentence, they're gonna throw the whole damn case out. Like it's just so stupid.
Yeah. No, I agree. We do need to have our guardrails, but we need to
Yeah.
have them kind of flexible a little bit so we can actually get some work done. Do you think crypto has accelerated the speed problem for investigators and banks?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think biggest problem, at least what I am seeing when I'm speaking with law enforcement officers, pretty much on a daily basis, it's like the lack of education. They don't know where to go. They're like,
Yeah.
they're calling their local Fed, and even though as much money federal agencies have to spend on education, you still have a lot of investigators within the federal government that don't understand crypto, right? And then you have a lot of local law enforcement, state, local. They reach out all the time. It's like, hey, this is my first crypto case, and honestly, it's not their first crypto case. It's the first crypto case they're investigating. I've also seen it frustrates me, and I've called a lot of the officers out on this. They'll go there and they'll say, "Hey, no, this is a civil matter." Like, no, it's not a civil matter because they scammed this individual under the pretense of this is an investment or this is a romance, whatever. Even if he or she it voluntarily sent them the money, doesn't make it a civil matter. This is a criminal matter. We need to investigate it. And I think a lot of it comes back to like, if I knew what I was doing, if I had the tools and the training in place, I could do my job effectively. I think a lot of the agencies are still under the illusion that, oh, this is not, I don't have this problem in my town. So
Yeah. And by the time law enforcement identifies where funds have landed, how often is the money already gone anyways?
oh my God. Yeah, it's rare. I mean, I think dumb criminals are the one. I think there's a saying in law enforcement, we only catch the dumb ones. And it's so true because the smart ones, that they've withdrawn the money in majority of my cases. But again, going back to the 4 month timeline, the money was long gone. Like I'm trying to play catch up. It was did we seize money and recover some funds? Yes, but ultimately our success rate is very, very low. And that's it sucks. I wish we were, in the 90 percentile in terms of winning, but we're not. And it's just, we just need to do a better job in law enforcement and training law enforcement officers. But then also, we also need to train the public better because ultimately we came to say, hey, it's law enforcement's job. Because if the public is also undereducated, then that's a problem as well, right? So I think we all have to work together, like from law enforcement to the banking sector, and then passing the information on to the citizens, the community members, saying, "Hey, this is fraud." Especially our elderly community, right? Like my parents are getting older and stuff, and I've told my mom and my dad a million times, like, "Hey, somebody calls me saying I'm in a wreck or something, just hang up. Okay, call my wife, right?
Yeah.
And ask her." because her number is unlisted and we have a separate number for families. But like, yeah, just hang up. So my wife's grandpa, John, he was scammed. It was a couple $1,000s, but he's on Social Security, so he has, very low income as is. But they called him as IRS agents and said that he had to go to Walmart and buy these Google gift cards and send him $1,500 or $2,000, whatever it was. And he was so embarrassed and he wouldn't talk to anybody for a while. I'm like, what's wrong with John? And then his daughter, my mother-in-law, he ended up telling her, oh, he couldn't, buy groceries or something. I forget the whole story. What he couldn't pay for something, and so he's asking him to borrow money. And she's like, yeah, sure. But she goes, did you not get your Social Security check this month or whatever? And that's when he told her, hey, like IRS called me and I had to give him $1,500 or whatever it was. And she goes, why would IRS call you? And anyways, but yeah, unfortunately, he was scammed.
I hate that so much. And it's also one of the things that I think when we look at this, it's like scams are no longer just fraud losses, right? We have to make sure that we handle these with empathy while still operating those effective fraud programs.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Finally, I'm so happy to share with you all that the Saturday Fraud Strategist is now a podcast. What? Yeah, on top of my weekly newsletter, you could now listen to and watch me talk about my, and hopefully your, favorite topic, fraud strategy. And from time to time, I'll be hosting operators and founders to discuss where the industry is headed and what we, fraud fighters, should pay attention to. I must say, I'm super excited, and if I'm being honest, a bit nervous about all of this. I've been debating with myself whether to start a podcast for ages, but kept putting it off. But now, this is the result, so I guess there's no turning back. So, if you want to join me for the ride, head over to Sardine's website and subscribe now. Are you ready? Am I ready? We'll find out next Saturday.
So I'd love to get in to Deconflict, right? That's one of the main reasons why you're here. Obviously, we've enjoyed the conversation so far, but I definitely want to make sure that we can learn more about what Deconflict is. And so I'd love if you'd start with, what is the origin or the original idea behind Deconflict?
The original idea about Frank came from Deconflict was I was investigating a case 6 months into it. Come to find out, I got a call from the FBI saying they're also investigating it. And it was a campaign year for me with the Secret Service, so I was constantly on the road. And I had built up the very, very good case, got the IP addresses, got the whole gamut, right? My pile was, I don't know, I had hundreds and hundreds of evidence paperwork. And then FBI calls me, and the reason FBI called me was because the area where I was in, the prosecutors, the AUS's office was fairly small. And actually, it was a prosecutor who called me and said, hey, do you know FBI's working on this case too? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, oh, they just requested a subpoena for this individual. And I was like, no. So anyways, FBI and I got connected. I forget who had more lead than I did, or they had lead. Anyways, I ultimately gave the case to the FBI. I said, dude, I'm on travel, like I'm constantly gone. And you're at home, so you can go ahead and have this case. But that was extremely frustrating, where you spend 6-7 months on building up a really, really good case, and you've identified the individuals, and then you find out some other agencies was also working on the same case in parallel without knowing. In law enforcement, that's actually a bad thing, because what we call blue on blue, it could be where him and I are going to go on the same day, same time to kick down our door, and we're both in civilian clothes with our badges under our shirts tucked in, and we could ultimately shoot each other, right? That's what blue on blue is. So anyway, so that's where it was extremely frustrating. I came up with the idea of creating a product called Verify Wallet back then. Now it's Deconflict. It's why don't we create one unified platform where all law enforcement agencies, they have to be vetted. Active law enforcement agencies can come in there, share information as much or as little as they want. Just give us a couple of data points that we ask you for, and then we're able to build everything upon that using AI and our own proprietary methodology that we have done, built over time. And so that's really how Deconflict got started. And then it kind of took off. We launched in July of 2025. As of a couple of weeks ago, we're over 1,300 different law enforcement agencies across all 50 states and 36, 37 different countries that are using our platform that give us data, and then we're able to take the data and share it with the private sector to stop fraudsters from withdrawing those funds.
That's incredible, by the way. Congrats.
Thank you.
So amazing. In part of the traditional like risk scoring. Why wasn't that enough for these types of cases?
Yeah. So from my own personal experience, I would sit across the table with my victims and I would ask them what happened. They would tell me their story. And I would do the whole tracing, do everything else. And I would, pick up the phone, call Binance's, Coinbase's of the world, along with lot of banks that had crypto exposures. And I would ask them like, hey, I've traced it. I know there's no money in here. But how, like, I was very curious, like, how do you guys like prevent fraud? And there's actually a former Secret Service agent. A couple of them actually work for Binance, and I was like, "Hey, dude, like, how do you guys investigate? Like, what, like, how does it work on your side?" And every single time, it was like, "Hey, we use analytics tools that provide us risk scores, and then we take that, and then we have our own internal methodologies we use to determine if something is fraud or not." And I was like, "Well, that's like a half a picture you're getting. That's not a full story." But I'm like, "Well, how do you know if it's like?" If the victim's speaking with law enforcement, and they're like, well, we don't because we don't speak with victims. We work with law enforcement directly. Sometimes the victim will email them or call them and report it to them, and they'll open up an internal investigation. But by the time it's too late, anyways, and then they'll come to law enforcement. So then I was like, well, that was kind of my aha moment. Like, what if we switch the model here? Like, I think risk scores have a place, but I think but I don't think the risk scores matter in investigations, in my opinion. I think you need something a little bit more concrete to that. Because if you're the compliance officer and a risk score comes through, and I've seen this multiple times happen, it says 30%, 20%, 5%, 6%, and you search the same wallet in Deconflict and saying it's been tagged by ABCPD or New York or Dallas or FBI, whatever. I mean, if I was a compliance officer, that's the information that I need, right? So that
For
is
sure.
essentially what we wanted to build, and that's we have built. Is so we don't do anything with risk scores. We don't think they work when it comes to fraud investigations. So we think if a wallet is coming onto your platform, if you're going to interact with it, you should know whether that is been reported as quote unquote, fraud by law enforcement, and that's essentially the gap that we fill.
I love that and would love for you to maybe dive a little bit deeper on, what's the difference between a generic fraud score and like actual investigative intelligence?
Yeah, so the way the tools work today, they rely on heuristics and probabilistic risk scores. They're machine learning models that they feed this stuff into, and then will trigger a risk score, what we call probabilistic risk score. The difference here is with Deconflict is like it's an actual true intelligence signal provided by law enforcement. So if you see a wallet in Deconflict, it's going to have the agency and the officer's information along with it, and then you're able to log in and message the officer, contact him, get a lot more information from him, and then ask for the legal process, right? So the ultimate goal here is like, how do we connect public and private sector, share information, communicate with one another, and then we kind of step back. We just make the connection and we'll step back. Hey, you guys work through the legal process and try to get the victim their money back. So ultimately, for me personally, we need to do a better job at protecting the American people. And that is like the biggest thing. What we're not doing is because we're just like working in silos. We're relying on legacy tools that really don't work. And ultimately, the American people are paying the price for it.
So true. So what data can be shared without exposing sensitive victim information on Deconflict?
The law enforcement perspective, we share the crypto wallet that's been flagged by law enforcement. And then we're able to share the law enforcement officer, his government details with the private sector. We can share that, and then we build our own internal contextual information behind it. And then we're able to share that information that's not provided by law enforcement to the financial sector. So when the finance sector, the compliance officer, when they see this information, they know that this is 100% verified, and they can contact the officer to even verify it if they don't have to take our word for it through the platform. That's where we tag every officer's name behind every single wall that gets reported in Deconflict. So we don't do any tracing. We're not trying to become a better tracing tool. You can still use the tools of your choice. We are simply a data provider. We're tool agnostic, so it doesn't matter if you have a favorite tool that you use, you can continue to use those tools. But we are simply like another search engine for you to come and index and say, hey, is this particular wallet reported by law enforcement before I allow this individual to transact? It's no different than how we process credit cards today, right? So if I swipe my credit card in New York today and 5 minutes later it gets swiped in Germany, Visa is going to block it, right? It's like, well, Malik was just in New York. How can it be in Germany as well at the same time? It's kind of the same thing. With us, with Deconflict, you can search it into our index it, and then if it's been reported, contact the officer. It hasn't been reported. We don't say it's a, we never obviously say everything is 100% accurate. Like when it comes to what we're reporting, because we only report information that's been reported to us by law enforcement. And then you can contact the law enforcement officer yourself and get a lot more information, whether it's through legal processes or other information.
I think it's amazing. But I do ask, how does this differ from traditional 314A/B collaboration?
Yeah, so 314A, obviously law enforcement is requesting you to produce, records, right? And 314B, it's bank-to-bank information sharing, right? What we're doing with Deconflict, we're connecting law enforcement to the banks in the real time. So related to crypto cases. So law enforcement, again, going back, it comes to our platform, they report a crypto wallet address, right? So it'll surface to all the other agencies that are working and say, hey, Malik just reported this wall. So not all 1,300 agencies know that I'm working on a case. Maybe 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, you get to find out, oh, I also have this information on this case. Let me contact Malik directly. But what we have done is we're also able to take that information and share it with banks. Because otherwise, the only way the banks are getting notified that this crypto wallet is bad is after the fact. So what we're trying to solve here is like, instead of allowing the bad actors, and everything happens automatically. So there's nothing, you don't have to do any manual searches. Don't allow the bad actor to withdraw the funds. Don't let the law enforcement catch up to you where money's going to come to you first before law enforcement even gets to you, right? So if you have the money, see if it's been triggered in Deconflict, because one of the things we've trained our law enforcement officers to do is immediately report to Deconflict. The sooner they report it to Deconflict, immediately we can spread the information out to everybody that's involved. So if I'm a bad actor, I just scammed you, I go to the bank, try to withdraw the funds, the bank's already aware, hey, somebody's tagged it, so I'm not going to allow you to do it. So, and then they can work with them and try to get that 314A from them.
I love that. And I love how you said before in another conversation that, like those requests is what they are. It's the request based or voluntary after the fact sharing, where Deconflict is more proactive. And I think that that's so essential in what we're trying to accomplish now with fraud investigations, that we're tired of being so reactive. It's time to get in front of it. So I just want to call that out, that I think you've done a phenomenal job here.
Thank you. Yeah, we briefed, we briefed the Senate committee a couple of weeks ago that we were invited to brief them on Deconflict. 'Cause that's how far the word has spread about Deconflict, where people from DC are calling us and saying, hey, how do we make this even better? So I think as we grow as a company, as we grow as a network, I think that's where everything's headed. And especially with the digital assets that are coming on chain. And, right now, I don't think crypto is fully adopted. Obviously, we know that. But I think as more consumers learn about crypto, want to own crypto or spend or pay with crypto, unfortunately, as the adoption increases, so will fraud. And so we are trying to be ahead of the curve. Like, how do we prevent as much or mitigate as much of it today? So when then that big adoption does happen, at least we have tools and things in place to stop from bad actors from harming U.S. citizens.
Oh, for sure. So we're shifting into the future of fraud intelligence sharing, and you shared that you recently surpassed 1,300 participating law enforcement agencies. First of all, again, massive congratulations. But what does that growth tell you?
We're solving a massive problem, right? Law enforcement literally comes to us every single day asking for help, and we are there to help them as much as we can. My entire team is built around law enforcement or ex-law enforcement. So we speak the language, we know what you have gone through. And again, so solving a massive problem for both sides of the aisle. We have a bunch of banks that reach out to us all the time, like, hey, and we'll do it, we'll help as much as we can. Can you search this wallet? Whatever. We had one reach out to us, they gave us 52 wallets and we had 46 hits on it.
Wow.
This is information they don't have, right? So and we want to help as much as we possibly can. And that, again, that is what our goal is. Our Deconflict's broader goal is not just one-off crypto investigation. It's really broader. We want to be the Google for fraud everything, to where you can come in there and search for banking information, IP addresses, everything crypto plus, right? Because that's our long-term vision. We want to solve the crypto problem, of course, but we want to, solve a broader problem as well. And that's still happening. I've talked to officers all the time that, now I think the treasury checks are being forged. We want to be known for all that stuff. Hey, just come in there, do a search and see if it's been reported. And that's kind of our long-term goal and vision here.
I think that's a great goal, and happy to support in any way, obviously. Where do you see that fraud collaboration heading over the next few years?
Yeah, I think especially with the Genius Act, with the clarity passing, and the government setting up their own bunch of task force and fusion centers, I think ultimately there will be one. My goal is one unified platform where everybody comes and uses it, and we hope to be that one. I do, as you know, I work for the government, 22, 23 years. I do think this problem can be solved much better in the private sector than the government. And the reason I say it is government is always under budget constraints. So when they cut something, you may be cutting something that's vital to the whole system, right? Or when you downscale. And I think with a private company, it's much more easier to scale up and also scale down and also control it because that is your business. That is what helps everyone. So I think ultimately there'll be one or two unified platforms, and we definitely hope to be one of them. And I think we will be just based on the growth that we are seeing. And so I think we invite all the law enforcement officers, all the fraud investigators to reach out, help, and we'll help you a lot. 9 out of 10 times we help you for free. We definitely don't charge law enforcement anything, like not a penny. And when it comes to finance section, we help them all the time. Like I said, I mean, just recently, somebody reached out to us, and that happens all the time. And we're more than happy to help anyone and everyone that we possibly can.
I think that's very admirable. And also it just kind of shows every fraud investigator that I talk to now that's kind of the way we all feel. It's like, how can we help? Because we know that this problem is bigger than each one of our individual organizations. And so the only way to move forward is to help and to give information where they didn't know where to go before, even resource sharing,
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. 100%.
Before I let you go, I ask all of my guests some version of this question, and it's, if you could leave fraud fighters, investigators, and financial institutions with one piece of advice about collaboration and fighting financial crime, what would it be?
Be curious. That would be number one. Like, I think the more curious you are, the better, right? Because the more nosy you are, like, nosy is a bad word, but like, you don't have to be nosy like, hey, what your neighbor is doing today, but like nosy when it comes to fraud. Because I don't think there's one entity or one person that knows anything about everything, right? Or that knows everything about everything. So for me, like, I think education is a very big component. Like, even now, like, I still read books, right? It's just one of those things where I don't read books just because I like reading books. I like to read books because I want to know, like, how are people doing things? Because I don't know everything. I'll be the first one to admit that. I'm not the best investigator in the world. I wasn't the best Secret Service agent in the world, but I always held myself at a very high standard. And even the people that I work with now, I mean, we have that, hey, you have to be a super high standard. That would be my only advice. Just always be curious and always be learning.
I love that. Malik, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and for sharing your experience and your perspective. It's truly been an honor to have you on the podcast.
No, I loved having it. Thank you for having us or having me. And looking forward to doing this again.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest takeaways from this conversation is that fraud prevention isn't just about detection anymore. It's about coordination. The organizations that can share intelligence, communicate effectively, and move quickly together are going to be far better positioned than those operating independently. Fraudsters have already figured out how to work as connected networks. The question for the rest of us is whether we're willing to do the same. So thank you to everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a fellow fraud fighter, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, stay vigilant, stay informed, and keep moving fraud forward. Thanks for listening to Fraud Forward. Remember, every conversation, every connection, and every insight moves our industry one step closer to stronger fraud defenses. If today's episode sparked an idea, share it with your team or tag me on LinkedIn. I love hearing how you're moving fraud forward in your own organization. Until next time, stay curious, stay resilient, keep moving fraud forward.